So thank you very much for your business. It was a pleasure meeting you all today. A couple of things. One is that this is the unedited version. It's unlisted, so YouTube has a listing service, so you can either click on list or unlist. So I don't want it to be seen by the general public, not least because it would be extremely boring for anyone that wasn't involved with it. But I don't have control over what YouTube do, but I can see if the number of people that see it. So, it should be fine, but I'm not YouTube. So if you can send the data logger, the updates from the data logger, and within the survey, I should show you how to do that. And if you can send that, not this weekend, but the following weekend, so 22nd, 23rd of March. If you don't do it, then please do it as soon as possible. I do everything in order and I wait for the data loggers to come through. So obviously it will delay it if you don't. It's better to send it earlier than later. The other thing is, then the final report will be, so I'm going to send a link with information with this report. That's in draft form, so I may change the wording, but it will be as an email attachment, and then within the details within the YouTube, which will be sent so that anyone can read it and understand it, or listen to it, should I say, and understand it. The details will contain links through to recommendations, but it's primarily in the video. So have a look now. I'm sorry if it rambles a bit.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
So it was a massive difficulty a month ago, but it's a lot better and nothing's grown since.
But you had mould growing there, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a lot more around here as well.
And you've removed it with
Yes.
anti-mould spray?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
Which one do you use out of interest?
Your dad's got a good one.
Yeah,
that
where is it, Liv?
I'll grab it. It's just in the cupboard.
So basically
To the right
it's
of
in
the
here,
sink.
so above the passive
Yeah.
vent.
And then also,
We can see it there quite clearly.
yeah, and then it was also under here as well.
Okay. What's that under there? It's just I'm just hearing the sound of the dehumidifier maybe.
Yeah.
So
And then also, if you just lift this up, there's
and
some
here there's dampness there.
and up there as well.
Okay, I'll have a better look at that in a sec. And your key's been rusting there.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Jace.
All right.
And interesting. So you were saying this was built in 1990s, you thought?
Let me check.
And it doesn't matter too much, but it's just interesting. So you don't have any trickle vents there, but you're obviously opening the window up, which is
Yeah.
great.
And we run this every day.
You've been doing that, and the sort of recently, or
We got this maybe 2 months ago, and we've been running that every day.
and the problems persisted irrespective of that, or they got better.
It did a month ago persist, and then it has got better recently.
Okay.
But there hasn't really been any new growth or anything.
And you've got a fan there,
That's
Yeah.
on every day as well.
and that's on every day,
Yeah.
but not at night, presumably.
Not at night.
It's a light switch operated fan, is it?
It's
It's it's with the mains.
So
and
it's
it kind of
manual.
runs.
You have to do it by.
I think it comes on. My dad set it to go automatically, kind of
Okay.
it's on a timer.
It's on a timer. Okay. And this is external. Oh, of course, you're on the corner of the outside wall, so it's external wall on that side and this side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then the bathrooms through there. Can we? Are there other issues in the property?
Do you want
Other-
to show?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's this has been a lot better. So Josie's dad installed a heated rack, and there was mould in the wardrobe, but it's been a lot better since that heated rack.
And that's an electrical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was kind of mould sort of coming up the wall.
Yeah.
There and along the wall.
So coming up this wall and on this side as well.
Yes.
And behind the
behind the bed, there was quite significant black mould, kind of.
Okay.
But it's now kind of been cleared.
Yeah.
But it's improved, hasn't it, Liv, since you've used the dehumidifier and also using the tumble dryer. We've got a tumble dryer going because I think before there was lots of clothes drying in the open, which was kind of increasing the humidity a bit. So since those interventions, they've helped, but obviously, you know, we're aware that this is still a kind of ongoing thing.
And it's
Well,
in the other room as well.
I'll get to the root cause. I mean, so just to explain, and the data loggers are really going to help us for lots of different reasons, but the root cause of mold and condensation is excess vapor made worse by insulation or lack of heat or lack of airflow. Those three components, you have to always start with the vapor, and I'm going to be looking at the ventilation. It may be that there's some issues with the ventilation that you're unaware of, and you know there may be some improvements. But the data loggers. So in the first instance, what I'll do is have a look at the background ventilation vapor before I'm here, and then afterwards, and I'm going to give you 3 things to do. In addition to anything that I do, to see if we can drive those vapor levels down. But the really important thing is that vapor, it can be measured in terms of grams per cubic meter, it can be measured in terms of vapor pressure, but it can also be measured in degrees centigrade as the dew point. And the dew point is also the temperature where condensation takes place at. And for various mathematical reasons, mold grows roughly 3 degrees centigrade above the dew point. If you drop the dew point down to the external temperature, you won't have a risk of mold and condensation. And dropping the dew point down to below the external temperature is by increasing ventilation and dehumidification and reducing vapor at source. Essentially, there are 4 sources of vapor. The greatest is human respiration. That's 750 mil a day.
So I stop breathing.
We all just die.
Well, if you stop being... Well, anyway...
That's not an option, by the way. We're not doing that.
But, you know, working from home, for example, has a massive vapor impact.
That's interesting.
And since COVID, you know, there's been a huge increase in the amount of mold and condensation in places. The second one is showering. Showering is about half a litre per person per day. Drying clothes is about half a litre. Well, so showering is half a litre per shower. So if you have 2 a day, you know, that's a litre. And I'll be looking at that. Drying clothes is half a litre per person per day, roughly, give or take. And using a dehumidifier, but I'll check that the In fact, if we have a look here, you want to have... that it looks like it's 20 litres a day, which is the sweet spot. For you need to have a sufficient rate, but not be too noisy that you don't use it. And then the fourth one is cooking, and cooking styles can dramatically affect the amount of vapor. But if you cook with tops and pots and pans and turn the heat down, you can reduce the amount of vapor produced by 80%. So pasta, for instance, and I can tell that your kitchen is effectively open plan because of the doors, and the extractor fan isn't going anywhere.
So this one is useless, basically.
Exactly.
So we've got this one here,
which is going out there. It's going out through there into as an external.
I think it's an
communal
external
ducting system.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll have a look at that. But that is a bathroom fan, and the building regulations are that if you have an over-hob fan, you have to have 30 litres a second. A bathroom is 15 litres a second, and I'll test that. Kitchen is 30, over-hob is 30 litres, and if it's a joining wall like that, it should be 60 litres, so 4 times faster than a bathroom extractor fan. And they're bigger, they're 150 mil as opposed to a bathroom fan which is 100 mil. So yeah, but I'll have a look at that. And you know, so when we look at the data, when I analyse them, I've got an AI-driven data log analysis tool, and you'll be able to see different times of day when you are producing more vapor, and if it coincides with when you're cooking, then you know that that's the primary source. Or if it coincides with when you're washing clothes, drying clothes, when you know. So you can tell by analysing the data, and it's great that you're friends, because a lot of the properties I go into, it's a tenant that may not be friends anyway with the owner, and it's really,
you might not analyse it.
because you know it takes teamwork. There's only so much an owner can do, so much, and a tenant can do so much, and it's working, getting together and using data. If you're using the data from the data loggers, then that will really help. And if you can send me a copy, but perhaps send Josie a copy, and then she can.
Sure.
But it'll look like a stream of numbers that won't mean a lot until it goes through the analysis.
Okay.
So I'll now test out the extractor fans and just see how well they're operating.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, the other thing is, so when you turn the kitchen on, it's just an on-off switch for the extractor fan, so it doesn't have an overrun function. And ultimately it depends on usage. So it's better to have a fan than not have a fan, but it's not obviously running as quickly as one would want it. And you also have to appreciate that it's open plan. So vapor moves through diffusion like smoke, and if somebody was smoking in the kitchen with the door open, you're going to smell it elsewhere in the property, even with the fan running. Well, so if it was above here, that's targeted, and most of the vapor will go up. But because it's all the way up here, the movement of air is not going to be as efficient, and it's just as likely to go out of there and there as it is there. So that's one thing to know about. And a lot of this is to do with understanding and appreciating the effects, rather. And it's a sort of nuanced approach. And things like anti-mold sprays and anti-mold paint and anti-condensation paint can go in the right direction, but they're not the root cause. The root cause is the vapor.
So I haven't cleaned this yet.
Okay, you're getting condensation on the window.
But just here.
Do you see it's double glazed window, and it's relatively modern, and you're getting condensation there.
And then just down here as well.
Okay, in the corner.
But it has not. I've actually forgot to clean this because I've been away, and it hasn't grown. And just here, it hasn't grown at all in the last month.
Is it up at the top as well, Nick? 'Cause sometimes it would be quite bad at the top.
Up at.
I haven't noticed.
Did you have it when you were here then?
I did have some mould around the windows, but it wasn't quite to the level that we had.
bit.
So I'll explain why you get it around windows. It's very common, and the reason why is because you get a lot of heat loss. So even though it's double glazed windows, and they look like they're quite efficient ones without metal around the outside that can cause lots of heat loss, but you still have to appreciate that the wall, a normal wall has got two bricks, and the distance between this section of wall here and the outside is very short.
Okay.
So you're getting far less insulation here, and there's lots of heat loss.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus these blinds, which are great from a privacy point of view, but they don't stop the humid air from diffusing through, but they stop the warm air from warming up the side. So you get a combination of heat loss from the insulation and lack of heat from the radiator.
Right.
Plus also I noticed you've got, are they storage heaters or are they?
So the ones in the main room and the living room are night storage heaters, but this is just a sort of regular radiator.
Okay. So interestingly now, so you've got two dehumidifiers. Interestingly enough, so all the energy that goes into a dehumidifier comes out as heat, but you get a 50% bonus because you're moving from the vapor phase to the liquid phase, so it releases energy, sort of in a reverse of you know how when you squeeze a spray can, it cools down the top, whereas the opposite of that, as you're going from vapor to liquid, it releases additional energy, a bit like an air source heat pump.
Yeah.
So you get a lot more bang for your buck using dehumidifiers than from electrical heating.
Yeah.
Plus, wet or humid cold air feels a lot colder than dry cold air. So if you reduce the vapor, you'll reduce the amount of heating that you'll need to feel just as warm, and so you can reduce your carbon footprint by using dehumidifiers and targeted ventilation, basically. But I'll have a look at the extractor fan now.
One thing is about 3 to 4 weeks before we had the kind of significant increase in mould, there was a leak from above.
Okay.
So you can see we haven't painted because we're letting it dry out, but there was a burst pipe from the flat above, and quite a significant amount of water came through and actually knocked off the electricity. So as you can see, it came mainly in this, it was just this main corridor ceiling, and you can see how it's kind of affected it. My dad's actually done a few damp readings, and it's still, and felt it, it's still quite damp.
I'll test it, but what I'd say is two things, three things. One is that any additional dampness is going to go in the wrong direction, but it's not much more than drying a wet t-shirt in terms of the amount of water. But if you look at videos of mine, you'll see examples where, say, somebody's had a leak from the ceiling, and you'll see quite often you'll get mould around that. That's because the surface relative humidity is very high near to the leak, but I'm not seeing mould in this area. So all it's doing is it's going through the vapor phase and adding to the internal vapor and going to, so I don't think I think it would be too marginal to make much. I mean, it's going to be less than drying a t-shirt, and you know you're already doing that. So when it comes to placing the dehumidifiers, when it comes to placing the dehumidifiers, you get the best bang for your buck if you place it next to the drying clothes. And then you get the next best bang for your buck if you place it in the room where you're getting the mould and condensation. So trying to find that. So
which is what you've been doing, isn't it? Really, you've been.
But I would say I wouldn't leave clothes drying without a dehumidifier internally.
Okay.
So one thing that I do, I'm not. The only things I dry are.
And the other thing I can say,
I've got a heated.
They are the worst thing for. They're the best things for drying clothes. They're the worst things for mould and condensation.
Are they?
Well, you're just speeding up the process of moving dampness from clothes to the cold wall. And dehumidifiers aren't very good at coping with the speed at which the vapor is coming off these things. So I'd discourage you from using heated rails or putting the heat on, and B, placing them next to a radiator.
I'll stop doing that.
It's all right.
But
these are all really helpful tips.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a nuanced approach. If you're looking at the data and you can see that you're not getting mould and condensation, then you can take more of a nuanced approach. You know, if you need to speed up because you're going out from, whatever.
You want a quick dry.
You want a quick dry, then, but
now we bought this before the tumble dryer, so I would only. But I can just put my jumpers that I can't tumble dry just on a non-heated one.
But if the dew point, if the internal dew point, which actually let's collect the data loggers now because it takes about half an hour to just calibrate them.
Yeah.
I'll have to obviously see how you do it on your system. Do you download it from a software?
So it's much less high tech than that. I just get them to send me the readings, and I've just created a chart.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to get a different type because they're very inexpensive. They cost like £15-20.
Yeah, fine.
So if then
Got
they
all the data. Yeah.
yeah.
That's fine.
What I'll have to do. Was this friends now, but this one is a wireless type, so you can actually pick it up remotely.
Okay.
But there are lots of different types.
Yeah.
The one that I tend to recommend, I haven't got an example with me at the moment. I've got an older version, which I don't think they're selling anymore, which is like this, and you pick up the data through an app called Sensor Blue, and it's every 10 minutes, and you then download it. In the first instance, send it to me. I'll then put it onto the website. I don't think I can just take. I mean, send me what you've got, and I'll see what I can do with it.
Yeah.
But
Will you be able to grab the data from that, do you think?
I doubt it. I don't. I mean, well, have you got the instructions for it?
No. Okay.
Have you got for these units? I'm not familiar with them. Are they logging, or are they just?
I think they're just
Points of
telling
time,
you. I think they're
yeah.
just telling you on points of time.
Yeah. In which case, unless you want to employ Olivia as a data logger to stand there every 10 minutes in the middle of the
got
night.
better things to do. No problem.
But we can make that element of Olivia redundant by for the cost of £20. You
Yeah,
can get
we'll get
three of them. You get 3 Olivias that are happy
What?
to do it in
She
the middle
comes
of the night. Anyway,
fine.
so yeah, I'll do that. It's useful. So with this, I'll show you. I'll have to turn this one upside down because it's. So it shows the degree centigrade and the percentage relative humidity, but nothing else. So there's a calculator. I've created a calculator which I put on a website called moldpoint.co.uk that calculates the dew point from knowing the degree centigrade and the relative humidity. But you have, and that's the important thing, is the vapor, the dew point, which is a measure of the amount of vapor in air. Because the relative humidity, so mold only grows where relative humidity goes above 85% for long periods of time, and condensation takes place when it hits 100%, but that's instantaneous. So relative humidity is a measure of the amount is air's capacity to hold moisture expressed as a percentage. So in the summertime when it's warm, you can get lots of vapor in the air, and all the seas and rivers and ponds and so on evaporate out moisture and it builds up. But you know, the relative humidity may only be 50 or 60% like yours is now. But at night, when it gets cold and the air can't hold as much moisture, you get to what's called the dew point, where the dew is on the ground outside, and that's because it's hit 100%. Because it's not because there's any more vapor in the air, it's because the air can't hold as much vapor, and so that it gets to and so mold gets to mold risk starts when it gets to 85%, which is roughly 3 degrees centigrade above the dew point.
Yeah.
But they're related.
And that's what we've noticed, haven't we, that in the mornings, on average, the humidity is around sort of 65, 70, whereas once you leave it a few hours, you've kind of ventilated, put the humidifiers on, it's going down to around sort of 50.
But what I'm sort of moving on to talking about is that it comes down to the surface temperature. And because it's the surface relative humidity that is important, not the relative humidity in the middle of the room. Because just as if you take a cold Coke can out of the fridge in summertime and the condensation forms on it, so the cold wall where you're getting the lack of heat around, and every property has somewhere that's cold, and I'll show you on a thermal imaging camera shortly, but there can be a 6-7 degree temperature difference between that, and roughly speaking every 1 degree temperature difference increases the relative humidity by 5%. So if there's a 7 degree temperature difference, that's 35 greater, so that goes from being 60% relative humidity to being 95% relative humidity, which is perfect conditions for growing mold.
Yeah.
And it's useful to think of it from the perspective of mold. What it wants
What
is
does it need?
lovely, consistent, humid environment. And it's not just about cold, because one of the areas in the world that has the worst mold is actually in Hong Kong, where it's warm, but it's very humid because it's tropical.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll leave that for a bit, and that will be useful, but not that useful. And I'm going to check. I'll do the ventilation now, and then have a look at the thermal imaging, and that's, you can see where the heat is, the temperature difference.
So this is the kitchen fan. It's going faster. It's going 21 litres, 22 litres a second. So it's going in the right direction, but it should be 60 litres a second. But it's manual as well, so obviously it depends on putting it on. But it's better than not having a fan.
Okay.
If it were me, that's always the starting point. I would just duct it out, and it's actually relatively easy to do that. You wouldn't even see it. Just put in ducting from there, and it would be relatively hidden, and just
and make it more direct.
And you'll have somewhere in here. You'll have the ability to. You can drill that out, and duct it through there.
Okay.
It takes somebody a couple of hours to do it. Not really.
Fine.
And these fans,
They are terrible.
but they normally have like a flick
What
switch.
is this?
No, but what I meant is from a.
This is it.
So that's just coming out there. But if you look at the original design, you'll probably find that there's an option to turn it from coming out there to coming out the back there. I don't know, because it doesn't even have the brand name on it, but I'll have a look.
So this here probably. No, I can't see it. So maybe this one doesn't allow it. But sometimes there's just a little switch that looks like this that you can flick from one to the other. You may have to replace that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But it smells like it's time to.
It's had its time, hasn't it?
Yeah, probably. If it came with the property. This is targeted.
Yeah.
So when you're
that's done
cooking,
well.
it's going straight up.
Yeah.
Whereas that the steam has to meander around. It can go through and it sort of eventually may find its way out. Plus, it's not. I mean, it's running 20 litres. I think I can't remember, but I've got it on. Whereas this would be 30, probably even 40 litres a second.
Okay.
So but the great thing is the ducting's in place. So that's the expensive thing, and that's already in place. This is actually, I mean, obviously the unit cost, whatever it is, could be a couple of hundred, but it's relatively easy to install it.
So you get a new one of these and get it wired up to that.
The ducting, yeah. So the air duct goes up through there. You need to drill out probably slightly wider than 10 centimeters, 100 mil, and then up there and then out.
And then out.
I'll show you a picture. Have a sort of rectangular pipe duct that goes there, and then the rectangular one needs to join the circular one, so it's an adapter, and then go straight out. So you're removing the fan. It's just the piping. And the reason for using a square one is that it's less visible, but you can use a round one. I'll put it up. This is showing the heat loss at the top. But it will be more obvious when it's cold outside. It's relatively warm at the moment.
Quite mild, isn't it?
Passive vents, I'm not a big fan of them. I would rather block them up and have targeted ventilation, because you only get the benefit when it's windy outside. If there's no wind, you don't get the vent, and you just get the cold. And you're better to have good bathroom extractor fan, good targeted kitchen extractor fan, and remove air with a dehumidifier. So
to actually turn those off, to not have them being used.
I personally would block it up with insulation.
Okay.
By closing it, you get the worst of both worlds, because you get no ventilation and you get the heat loss. But if you insulate it, block it up and insulate it, then you don't get the heat loss. I mean, you're not seeing the heat loss at the moment because is heat gain, in fact, at the moment. But at night, that would look really blue and cold.
And that's probably why the mold's settling there.
Yeah, you can see it's cold above because you get the heat loss there. One of
Do you
the
want me
col-
to move this bed out? Because I can do that. I used to do it quite.
No. Mold gets the blame for allergies,
Yeah.
but it's not actually the mold that causes the allergies. It's
Okay.
dust mites.
Uh-huh.
And you get dust mites in the same environment that you get mold.
Yeah.
And mold is like the canary in the coal mine, in that it's telling you that you've got a humidity issue, a vapor issue. And so what you need to do to reduce the risk of dust mites is, I might actually just turn this off for a moment just so that you can hear it more easily on
Are there dust mites there?
well, you can't see dust mites, but what I say is that you've got carpet at the base of the wall and you're going to have a risk of dust mites. And what you should do, I mean, it's probably not something that you're going to do, but if you were going to arrange the room from a damp perspective, you'd have the bed on the other side of the wall, on the warm side of the wall, not the cold side of the wall. But that's probably not great from a cosmetic point of view. But what I say is, while you're bringing the vapor levels down, you should try and get Olivia to vacuum behind here regularly, to turn bedclothes. And I mean, if she doesn't have a concern about dust mites, then that's fine. But they will colonize where there's high relative humidity, which is in the same environment as mold.
So this is at a high risk of dust mites.
This carpet here in particular. Yeah.
But there's nothing there currently.
Well, I can't see. I mean, they're microscopic, so I wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah.
But what you can sometimes see, and I can't see here, is mold. Carpet moth. But I'm not seeing it here, and that's in the similar environment as well. But I'll put that to video just because it's useful to know, because some people panic about mold, and with good reason, but it's not the mold that causes the allergy. But sometimes it can have a psychosomatic response, and B, it's the dust mites that can grow in the same environment. When you've got carpets, you're more likely to get it than if you just had a timber floor. So we're just talking about objects under beds.
Yes.
So obviously it's because you're getting too much vapor, and we're going to look at that and improve it. But in addition, it's because some objects like leather is marginally hygroscopic.
Yeah.
So whereas a normal surface would have would just have the vapor land on the surface and have the surface relative humidity based on temperature and vapor, some marginally hygroscopic or hygroscopic surfaces can draw the vapor in from the air, so they attract, like a magnet attracts ions. It can attract, so it can increase the surface relative humidity and therefore increase the mold. So salt itself, salt that you like sea salt, is hygroscopic. It has a surface relative, or it has a relative humidity, specific relative humidity of 75%, which is why I use it for calibrating. But that brings it down below the 85%, the magic 85%. So which is why people use salt historically for preserving meat and other products, because it stops the mold growing. Anyway, so that's just to say that it's the same environment that you're getting shoes, but it's more, and leather goods and some plastics as well. But it will be even more at risk. So you've always got to think of the four things. One is to reduce the vapor, so follow Dew's law, which means keeping the internal dew point below the outside temperature by ventilation, dehumidification, and reducing vapor at source. Second one is airflow. So the more that the air can, the warm air from radiators can pass in underneath,
Okay.
the better. Third is insulation. So, for instance, in the cupboard here, the insulation will lower the surface relative humidity.
Yeah.
And I'll show you some products, but I would personally I would either use thermal lining paper, or really simple inexpensive one is just wood fibre that you can get at B&Q for a small amount of money. Then the fourth is heat.
Yeah.
So obviously the heat, but if you've got heat and no airflow, then you're just going to not transfer the heat to the place that's getting the humidity.
Yeah.
And the downside of heat is it creates increased evaporation. So, for instance, humans will respire more vapor when it's hot than when it's cold.
Which will just add to the
just
vapour
add.
in the air.
So, I mean, I went to somebody's house. The whole family were, I mean, they were refugees from Afghanistan. Lovely family, but they all basically lived in one room, which was super hot, and the rest of the flat was super cold.
Yeah.
And they were producing more vapor than they would do if they were.
Of course they were. There's so many.
But so it makes sense. You drink more when it's warm because you're evaporating, respiring. Okay, so I'm now going to look to see what I can do to improve the fan, and we'll put this bed back.
So we got a plume of mould above here, which is very common and we've got condensation there. Down there.
The more you can keep beds away from walls,
The better.
the better, because of airflow.
Yeah.
And the same with sofas, external walls, obviously,
Okay.
not internal walls. What's useful is having a damp meter. And this is professional grade. They cost about £500, but a much better one, it costs only £23, is this one. It's just not calibrated. So, but that doesn't matter in your own property because it's a relative thing.
I think he does.
Well, so the one I recommend is the one that has radio waves,
Okay.
and this one is on drywall, because I imagine, so your plasterboard, so you can see that. See, I get right in there. And what's useful to do is have these, and then just over time, just see how they're improving. It's damp, but it's not off the scale.
Okay.
So that's useful to have. This one's called Dr. Meter. There are lots of different ones, but I'd like this one. Dr. Meter, about £23 on Amazon, and it does both surface and radio waves, but the radio waves are generally better because it gets deep within it, not just on the surface. See, there's no benefit to me, but these are a couple of insulating products that are out on the market. So this one is called Space Therm. It's exceptionally expensive, but I use it myself. It's about 10 times more expensive than what's called PIR, which is like Celotex, which is a sort of plasticky one, which actually may be appropriate here.
Okay.
But the only trouble with that is that it's quite thick. To get the same, so you get the same insulation from this. It's about 10 millimeters, 1 centimeter. You get the same insulation as you do with PIR when it's about 6.5 centimeters. So it's a lot thicker, and this is definitely much better with reveals because it doesn't hide the reveal. Reveals is the area around the walls, around the window. This one is called Sempeter. It's a German brand. I've used it, but it's really difficult to get it perfectly lined up. I think you need a specialist skill for it. And but there's another one, I haven't got a sample with me, called thermal lining paper. and I think it's made by Rockwool, and I would use that in the back of your cupboard. Or there's something called wood fibre, which is much cheaper, but is sort of a little bit less attractive.
Okay.
Uh,
How
but
much
you
is
can-
that? How much is the thermolining rock?
It's about £50 a roll,
Okay.
and you need adhesive as well, which is another bit. But it's more the cost of getting somebody to put it up. It's
Okay.
actually relatively
I think
easy.
I think I've got some. My dad
Yeah,
is
he's
quite, and
pretty-
also my
pretty-
boyfriend's dad as well. So
Oh right.
I've got an army
You've got
of.
builders in
I've
the
got
family.
builders on tap.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
That's what you need. So this is using an anemometer to test the. Oh, is the fan's on?
It is when the light's on. Do you want me to
Okay.
turn the light off?
Just leave it for a sec. So we're looking for 15 litres per second, this number here, and it's showing 6 litres a second, so you're way too low.
Okay.
So that's going to be the first problem. Do you want to turn the light off? What happens?
I'm just going to put the water just down there.
How long does it remain on for, do you know?
So my dad has increased it. I think is it now 30 minutes after?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good, but it's not going fast
It's not
enough.
good enough. Okay.
And I'll see if there's an obvious reason why that is.
I think there was a kind of a crappy one beforehand, and I think he has either put it in or he's increased the length of it.
The overrun. So sometimes they're just very easy to clean out, so I'll see if I can improve that one. So this just comes off and it looks pretty dirty. So we'll tidy it up, clean it up, and I see that's the highest setting, so it's half an hour, so that's good. This is the inside, and that's the pipe. It's a bit dusty. If you're ever cleaning it out, just use this, which is the isolator.
Yeah.
So that's now on, and it's running. So it should, well, I'm speaking too quickly, but it's often quieter once it's cleaned up as well. So oh wow. There we go, we're getting to 13.2
Okay.
and 13.5, 6, 7, 9, or nearly 14. So you're basically there now.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's roughly 3 times the speed of before.
Wow.
The question I get asked a lot is why are bathrooms the place where you don't get mould, or often you don't get mould, not always. And the very simple reason is because it may be the source of vapour, but it's also probably warmer and better insulated than the other rooms. And because vapour is diffusing, it will quickly move from the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it will move from the bathroom more so if you leave the door open. You want to leave the door closed and have the extractor fan running for half an hour, which it will be. But I will encourage landlords to put in spring hinges. They look the same as normal hinges, don't cost very much money, and they're very simple to do, and it just saves having to remind the tenant to keep the bathroom door closed.
Okay. So what is this spring hinge?
It's a hinge with a spring.
Okay. Okay. And that means that the door is
Cut closed.
closed. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, it's used for fire doors, but it's also
right. Okay.
or
fine.
you can get what's called a perco as well. which is
Oh,
something-
those things. These.
No,
things.
so it's actually on the hinge itself. The modern day
Okay.
one, you have it on the hinge.
Okay. Fine.
So these data loggers are in the same calibration
Yeah.
unit. So it's showing 19.5 degrees centigrade 61 on that one. I don't know what it shows on the other one. Mine that's pre-calibrated shows 59, and I'll give you the actual, and 20 degrees centigrade. So there's an error, and these are slightly out. So you just send me the data over. But in the future, when you're doing the data loggers, I'll have to get you to do a calibration on it, and I'll just briefly show you how to do that.
Yeah.
Let's just see so you can see they're in the same unit, and yet they're showing slightly different things. So Imagine using HG anti-mold spray or similar.
Yes.
They're the best ones. Anti-mold paint goes in the right direction, but it's not dealing with the
Not
root
with-
cause,
okay,
which is
these-
vapor. You can grow mold on anti-mold paint quite easily,
Right.
but you know it helps, but it's not.
It's not great. No.
Anti-condensation paint works as well, but you know so there is a downside to it, and that's the colour isn't as uniform. Well, I mean, this is white, I guess, so they probably do a perfect white. So,
Okay.
Um,
fine. Okay.
but you're
It's-
really dealing with the root cause is
Right,
what you really
fine.
want to go. It
Yeah.
goes in the right direction. So,
Okay. Fine.
Okay,
3 things. One is keep the bathroom door closed.
keep it closed.
Yeah,
Yep.
and do make sure the fan is running, and
Bath.
don't have showers without the light on, because otherwise it won't. But I'm sure
Yeah.
you wouldn't do. But anyway, keep it closed. Cook with tops on pots and pans and turn the flame down. So when it's simmering, it's still 100 degrees centigrade. It's still as rapid as cooking as quickly as if it's boiling with a ferocious boil, but it reduces the amount of vapor produced by about 80% from cooking. And then the second one is drying clothes. If you can dry them, ideally without a rack and with a dehumidifier next to them.
Yep.
And then use the other. So you just use the 1 bedroom, do you? Typically. The 1 bedroom, typically.
Yes.
So with the other one, what I would do is, if you're happy to have it overnight, great. But either otherwise, have one in here and the other one in your bedroom before
Yeah.
you go to bed and first thing in the morning.
So
Yeah.
putting the dehumidifier on overnight, basically.
Well, if you're happy to have it overnight, great.
Okay.
But you know, a lot of people don't want to have a dehumidifier
Yeah.
running in the middle of the night. But at least if in the couple of hours before going to
Okay.
bed and first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
that will go a long way.
Okay.
And you'll be monitoring the relative humidity and temperature.
Yeah.
Temperature is as important as relative humidity.
Okay.
I thought when you go away, leave a dehumidifier running, dripping into the sink with a drain. And you normally get a tube coming out of the back of the dehumidifier, so you can have it just dripping into the sink and leave it sitting at 70% relative humidity. It'll cost virtually nothing to run, like pennies, and it will. And so one of the worst times for mold and condensation is when you're away, when you've showered, you've cooked, you've washed your clothes, you've had
Yeah.
coffees, and then close everything up and without any heating on. And it will also save your electricity bills and so on, because you don't need to have as much heat when you don't have the vapor, because the main reason for having heat on is when you go away is to stop vapor build up.
Yeah.
So it's a cheap way of solving it.